Hello everyone. I just wanted to go over a couple more examples of solving by factoring when we have to factor by grouping. So I picked a couple more examples to go over. Just kind of follow along if you're having trouble with this idea and let me know if you have questions. Okay, so when you're solving by factoring, the very first thing, you want all your terms on one side of the equation. Okay, so I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. So I get all my values on one side. So I have 5v squared plus 14v minus 3 equals 0. Okay, now everything's on one side. When there's a number in front of this squared term, and we can't factor out a greatest common factor in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to multiply this 5 and this 3 together to start, right? So we're looking for a product. So I'm going to multiply 5 and negative 3. So we're looking for a product of negative 15, since 5 times negative 3 equals negative 15, okay? And we're looking for a sum of 14. Okay, so the negative 15, that comes from multiplying these two numbers together right here. And then the 14 comes from this middle term right here, okay? So I like to always just start, what are some numbers that multiply to negative 15? So we know 5 and negative 3 do, negative 5 and positive 3, right? But if I add either of those pairs together, this first one, 5 plus negative 3, I get positive 2. Negative 5 plus 3, I get negative 2, right? Neither of those are 14, so that's not what I want. Other things that multiply to 15 would be negative 15 and 1 and positive 15 and negative 1, right? So we'll add those together. And I get negative 14 and positive 14. That positive 14, right, is what I was looking for. So this is our set of numbers that we want. Now that we have that, right, we're not done. We just take these values to continue with our factoring. So I'm going to write it out. 5v squared plus 15v, parentheses, plus negative 1v. So I'm taking the 15 and putting it with a v, and the negative 1 and putting it with a v, minus 3. I'm going to factor out the greatest common factor from each. So both 5v squared and 15v are divisible by 5. So I factor out a 5. They both have v's. So I'm going to take a v out as well. So we have 5v on the outside. And then we're left with v plus 3, right? This next set, the only thing that they have in common, they're both negative. So we can take out a negative 1. And then we're left with v plus 3, right? These are the same, which is what we're hoping for. So we have 5v minus 1, v plus 3. Now it's completely factored. Once you get it factored, you can set each factor equal to 0. So 5v minus 1 equals 0. v plus 3 equals 0. Now we're going to solve these independently, right? So I'm going to add 1. I get 5v equals 1. And I would divide by 5. So we're left with v equals 1/5, right? Do the same thing over here to solve, and we'd have v equals negative 3. So both of these here are my solutions to this problem, right? So it's kind of a time-consuming problem. Obviously, you see how much work I have here, which is a lot. Right? It's just one of those things. You have to do a lot of work for these problems, okay? So let's try this next one. So remember, very first thing we did was bring everything to one side. So I'm going to add 7x to both sides. All right, so we have 2x squared plus 7x equals negative 6. I'm going to add the 6 to the other side. Everything's on one side, so 2x squared plus 7x plus 6 equals 0, right? Again, no common factor between all three of these terms. So we're going to multiply the 2 and the 6 together. So we're looking for the product 2 times 6 is 12. So we're looking for the product of 12 and a sum of 7. All right, the product of 12, well, let's keep our colors the same. So the product of 12 we get from multiplying those together. And then that sum of 7 comes from this middle term right here, right? So product of 12, we have 6 times 2. That multiplies to make 12, but those add to 8, so that's not it, right? You have 4 and 3. Those multiply to 12. 4 plus 3 adds to 7, which is what we're hoping for, right? So sometimes your table doesn't end up being as long as that first one. So again, remember we take these two numbers, so we'd say 2x squared plus 4x plus 3x. So I put both the 4 and the 3 with an x, right? And then at the very end, we have this plus 6. So we've just broken up this 7 into the 4 and 3, right? We're not really changing it. We're just breaking it into parts, and we have to figure out what those parts are. Now we'll look for a common factor within these pairs. So for this first one, both those numbers are divisible by 2 and x, leaving us with x plus 2. Next one, 3x and 6, both divisible by 3, so left with x plus 2. So we have 2x plus 3, x plus 2 equals 0. It's completely factored, but our goal is to solve by factoring. So now I'm going to set each of these factors equal to 0. So 2x plus 3 equals 0, and x plus 2 equals 0. I can subtract 3 here. I get 2x equals negative 3, and divide by 2. So x equals negative 3/2, right? Here, subtract 2, x equals negative 2. Okay, so I just wanted to go over those. Obviously, the factoring part's tricky for all these. Once you get it completely factored, I think it's pretty straightforward, but getting to that factor position is pretty tricky. Please email me with questions. It's always good to hear from you guys. I hope everyone is well, and I will talk to you soon.